They refused to treat her wounds because they thought she was nobody. By the time they realized who she was, the blood had already soaked through the concrete. At order 2.17 hours, the medical wing of Fort Calder Secure Operations Base was quiet in the way only military silence can be, controlled, deliberate, heavy with rules. The fluorescent lights hummed softly. A lone corpsman flipped through a clipboard. Somewhere deeper in the building, a ventilator exhaled with mechanical patience. Then the doors burst open. 2 soldiers dragged a woman inside between them. She was limp but conscious, boots scraping against the polished floor, her tactical jacket torn, her right sleeve dark with blood. Her hair, short, regulation length, was matted to her forehead. One eye was already swelling shut. IED simulation went wrong, one of the soldiers said quickly, breathless. Training range, Charlie. She needs treatment. Now. The corpsman barely looked up. Name? Unit? The soldier hesitated. She didn't give... That's not how this works, the corpsman interrupted, already annoyed. You don't just drop bodies in here without clearance. The woman lifted her head an inch. Her voice came out hoarse, but controlled. Lena Carter, she said, requesting medical evaluation. The corpsman glanced at her wrist. No visible unit patch, no rank insignia on the torn jacket, just plain fatigues, deliberately stripped. He frowned. Where's your commanding officer? Unavailable, she replied. That's a problem. Blood dripped onto the floor, steady now. The corpsman sighed, set the clipboard down, and finally stepped closer. He looked her over the way you inspect equipment. Efficient, detached. This isn't life-threatening, he said. You can wait. One of the soldiers stiffened. Sir, she was inside the blast radius. I said she can wait, the corpsman snapped. We have protocol. Lena's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. She'd learned long ago that begging only makes people crueler. They guided her to a plastic chair against the wall and let go. She slid down slightly, back against the cold surface, breathing shallowly. Every inhale felt like glass in her ribs. Her left hand trembled, but she forced it still. Discipline wasn't loud. Discipline was staying quiet when everything inside you screamed. Fort Calder wasn't listed on most maps. Officially, it was a joint training and evaluation facility. Unofficially, it was where the military sent problems it couldn't afford to explain. Black site exercises, interagency operations, classified units that didn't exist. People here learned quickly not to ask questions. Lena Carter had arrived 6 months earlier under a name that wasn't hers, wearing patches that meant nothing, assigned to a logistics role that required no attention. She spoke little, trained obsessively, never complained. Most assumed she was a washout. Some thought she was hiding from something. None of them guessed the truth. Because real operators didn't advertise themselves, and Navy SEALs, especially the ones who worked alone, were trained to disappear. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The pain crept deeper, a slow, dangerous warmth spreading beneath her ribs. Her vision blurred at the edges. She pressed her teeth together, focusing on her breathing the way she'd been taught underwater, slow, measured, controlled. Across the room, laughter drifted from the nurse's station. Someone made a joke about weekend warriors and fake injuries. Lena closed her eyes. She thought of the ocean at night. Cold, endless, honest. This wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated. It was the first time it might kill her. A junior lieutenant entered the wing, latent. Daniel Reyes, barely 24, freshly assigned, still wearing belief-like armor. He froze when he saw the blood on the floor. What happened here? He asked. The corpsman shrugged. Training injury. She's stable. Reyes looked at Lena. Really looked. Her posture wasn't slumped the way injured soldiers usually were. Even seated, she held herself with unconscious precision. Her boots were worn in a way that spoke of real deployments, not parade grounds. Her hands, despite the shaking, were scarred, calloused. This woman had seen things. Ma'am, Reyes said gently, kneeling. How long have you been waiting? Lena opened her good eye and met his gaze. Long enough, she said. That was all. Something in her voice, flat, steady, unafraid, sent a chill up his spine. Get her on a gurney, Reyes ordered. The corpsman stiffened. Lieutenant, she doesn't have clearance. I'll take responsibility, Reyes said, louder now. Move. Reluctantly, they did. As they lifted her, her jacket fell open, and there it was, a small, black insignia stitched inside the lining, meant to be hidden unless absolutely necessary, a trident. The room went silent, the corpsman's face drained of color. Reyes stared, heart pounding, as the realization hit him like a physical blow. They hadn't ignored a nobody, they had left a Navy SEAL bleeding in a chair, and somewhere in this base, people were about to do everything they could to make sure that mistake never saw daylight. The gurney wheels squealed too loudly in the hallway. Daniel Reyes noticed it immediately, how every sound suddenly felt amplified, like the bass itself had leaned in to listen. Doors that were usually shut stayed half open. Conversations died mid-sentence as they passed. Lena Carter didn't say a word. She lay still, eyes closed now, jaw clenched, breath shallow but controlled. The medic walking beside her tried to start an IV and failed twice. His hands were shaking. Reyes caught his eye. "Focus," he said quietly. "Yes, sir." But the damage was already done. Word had begun to move. The trident changed everything. In the military, symbols matter. A patch, a tab, a pin. They tell stories without words. And the trident was one of the rarest. It didn't just mean elite. It meant accountability. It meant that somewhere, buried deep in a classified chain of command, there were people who did not tolerate negligence, especially not toward their own. The corpsman who dismissed her now stood rigid in the corner, staring at the floor as if hoping it might open and swallow him. "I didn't know," he muttered. Reyes didn't respond. He was replaying the moment in his head, the blood on the floor, the waiting, the laughter. His stomach tightened. This wasn't just a mistake. This was fear dressed up as protocol. Inside Trauma Room 3, the lights snapped on, harsh and white. As they cut away Lena's jacket, the full extent of her injuries came into view. Shrapnel burns along her left side, deep contusions across her ribs, a hairline fracture in the forearm, internal bleeding, slow, insidious, the kind that doesn't scream until it's too late. She should have been treated immediately, one of the senior medics whispered. No one contradicted him. As they worked, Reyes stood back, hands clenched behind him, watching the rise and fall of her chest. He felt out of place, too young, too clean, too new to be standing at the edge of something this serious, yet, somehow, he was already in it. A senior officer entered without knocking. Commander Paul Whitaker, Base Operations. 30 years in uniform. A man who understood power the way some men understood weather, by instinct. "What's going on?" Whitaker asked, voice calm, eyes sharp. Reyes snapped to attention. "Sir, training injury, delayed treatment." Whitaker's gaze flicked to the trident, now laid carefully on a tray. "Ah, there it is." Whitaker's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Calculation. Damage control. "Lieutenant," he said smoothly, "why don't you step outside?" "With respect, sir," Reyes replied, heart pounding. "I authorized treatment. I'd like to remain." A pause. Then Whitaker smiled, a thin, professional thing. "Of course you would." Lena came to consciousness slowly, pain first, then sound, then the faint smell of antiseptic. She opened her eye. Whitaker stood at the foot of the bed. "Well," he said, "this is unfortunate." Lena stared at him, unimpressed. "You left me sitting on a chair," she said quietly, "for 43 minutes. Whitaker raised a hand. "Let's not get emotional. Protocol was followed as information allowed." Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. "That's not protocol," she said. "That's cowardice." The room went very still. Reyes felt his breath catch. No one spoke to commanders like that. Whitaker leaned closer. "You're operating under an alias on my base," he said. "Without visible rank, without disclosure. You put my people in an impossible position." Lena's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I was ordered here," she replied. "By people higher than you, that landed." Whitaker straightened. "Be careful," he warned. "You're injured, vulnerable. This doesn't have to turn into something career-ending." Lena held his gaze. "I've already buried friends who didn't get treatment in time," she said. "I won't be quiet so you can sleep better." For the first time, Whitaker looked unsure. Later that night, long after Lena was stabilized and moved to a secure room, Reyes sat alone in the corridor. His career flashed through his mind in pieces, commendations not yet earned, promotions not yet denied. He knew how this worked. He'd seen it at the academy. The system protected itself first, but he also knew what he'd seen on that floor: the blood, the waiting, the silence. A door opened softly behind him. Lena stood there, arm in a sling, pale but upright. "You didn't have to stay," she said. Reyes stood quickly. "Yes, ma'am, I did." She studied him for a moment, like she was measuring something invisible. "Why?" she asked. He swallowed. "Because if I pretend I didn't see it, then I'm part of it." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lena nodded once. "Good," she said, "because this doesn't end here. Somewhere deep in the base, phones were already ringing, reports were being rewritten, cameras reviewed, stories aligned, and above it all hung one quiet, terrifying truth. They had tried to let a Navy SEAL die, and people like Lena Carter didn't survive that kind of thing just to walk away. By morning, Fort Calder looked normal again. That was the most dangerous part. The blood had been cleaned, the chair against the wall replaced, the incident log revised from delayed medical response to standard triage under limited information. Cameras covering the medical wing were flagged for routine maintenance during the exact 46 minutes that mattered. The machine had woken up, and it was already correcting itself. Steer. Daniel Reyes felt it the moment he stepped onto the parade deck. Conversation stopped when he approached. Senior NCOs, who usually greeted him with nods, suddenly found reasons to check their phones. A captain he respected walked past without eye contact. Reyes hadn't even filed a report yet. They already knew he might. At 0800, his inbox chimed. No explanation. Just gravity. Lena Carter watched the base from a narrow window in the secure medical ward. She'd been ordered to remain on site under observation, which was a polite way of saying containment. 2 MPs outside the door. No phone, no external contact. Standard procedure for someone who officially didn't exist. A Navy doctor checked her vitals and lowered his voice. "You're lucky," he said. "Another 20 minutes. "I know," Lena replied. He hesitated. "They're trying to bury this. Of course they are. You could make it very uncomfortable for them," he added carefully. Lena looked back out the window. "I didn't come here for comfort." Reyes stood outside room 4B, spine straight, pulse loud in his ears. This is how it starts, he thought. A closed room. A friendly tone. A permanent consequence. "Enter." Whitaker called. The room was immaculate. Flags, framed commendations, coffee already poured. Whitaker gestured to a chair. "At ease, Lieutenant." Reyes sat. "Daniel," Whitaker began warmly, "you did fine last night. Truly. Initiative under pressure. That's what we want from young officers." Reyes didn't relax. "But," Whitaker continued, "you're new here. You don't yet understand how delicate this installation is." "Yes, sir." Whitaker folded his hands. "Ms. Carter's presence is classified. Her injuries occurred during an exercise that officially never happened. Documentation must reflect that reality." Reyes felt his throat tighten. "Sir, with respect, she was denied care." Whitaker sighed, as if disappointed. "Denied? No. Delayed. A misunderstanding. She nearly died." "And she didn't," Whitaker said gently, "which means no harm, no foul." Silence stretched. Whitaker leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You'll submit a revised statement. You'll confirm that all procedures were followed to the best of your knowledge. In exchange, this ends cleanly. And if I don't?" Whitaker's smile faded. "Then your judgment comes into question," he said. "Your fitness, your future." Reyes thought of his father, 22 years enlisted, never promoted past E7 because he asked too many questions. He thought of the academy oath he'd spoken with shaking hands. He thought of blood on a floor. "I won't change what I saw," Reyes said quietly. Whitaker stared at him for a long moment. "That's unfortunate," he said. "You're dismissed." As Reyes stood to leave, Whitaker added calmly, "Careers don't end in explosions, Lieutenant. They end in paperwork." That afternoon, Lena felt it too. The shift. The guards outside her room changed. Younger, less talkative. Her meals arrived cold. The Navy doctor was reassigned. Isolation was another weapon. She lay back against the pillow and let herself drift. Not into sleep, but memory. 8 years earlier. Eastern Mediterranean. Night. Lena moved through water like it was part of her body. No splash, no wasted motion. Just breath control and darkness. The target vessel loomed ahead. She'd been 26. Team lead. The only woman on that op, not because of politics, but because she was the best option. Period. When the extraction went wrong and the junior operator panicked, Lena had dragged him out under fire, bleeding from a wound she hadn't noticed yet. Back then, someone had treated her immediately because someone had done the right thing. She opened her eyes. Funny how courage thins out when it gets inconvenient, she thought. Reyes sat in his quarters that night, staring at the unsigned report on his tablet. One signature. That was all it would take. He could rationalize it. Everyone did. For the mission, for stability, for the greater good. His door chimed. He opened it to find Lena standing there, flanked by 2 MPs. "They gave me 10 minutes," she said. The MPs stepped back. Reyes swallowed. "Ma'am, they're watching everything." "I know." She stepped inside anyway. Up close. She looked smaller than he remembered, but harder, like steel forged thin. "They're going to try to break you," Lena said calmly. "Not loudly, not fast. They'll isolate you, question your competence, make you doubt your memory." Reyes nodded. "They already started." She studied his face. "You don't have to be the hero. I don't want to be," he said. "I just don't want to be ashamed." A corner of her mouth lifted. Brief, genuine. "That's usually enough," she said. She reached into her sling and slid a small data chip onto his desk. "Redundant body cam feed," she said. "Encrypted. I wasn't supposed to have it." Reyes stared at it. "If I use this, they'll come after you," she finished. "And me." The weight of it settled between them. Reyes picked up the chip. "Then we do it right," he said. Lena nodded once. Outside, somewhere deep in Fort Calder, the system hummed on, unaware that 2 people had just decided not to let it win quietly. The investigation began the way all controlled explosions do, quietly and too late to stop. An email went out at 600 hours. On paper, it looked harmless. Routine, administrative. In reality, it was a signal flare. Daniel Reyes was removed from duty by noon. No accusations, no charges, just a reassignment to temporary administrative status pending review. His access badge downgraded, his terminal locked, his name quietly pulled from the duty roster. The base didn't shun him, it erased him. Reyes packed his desk in silence while 2 senior NCOs stood nearby. Not hostile, not supportive. Neutral. That was worse. As he walked out, a master sergeant he barely knew stopped him. "Sir?" the man said softly, eyes forward. "For what it's worth, some of us saw." Reyes nodded once. It mattered more than he expected. Lena Carter wasn't erased. She was contained. At 1400, Commander Whitaker arrived at the medical wing with 2 civilians in dark suits. No insignia, no introduction. The kind of men who never signed their names. They closed the door. Whitaker folded his arms. "You've complicated things." Lena sat upright in the bed, IV still in her arm. "I survived. That usually does." One of the civilians spoke, voice smooth. "Your presence at Fort Calder was never meant to intersect with base medical infrastructure." "That's a long way of saying someone panicked," Lena replied. Whitaker bristled. "You violated compartmentalization. I followed orders." "You followed somebody's orders," Whitaker snapped. "But not mine." Lena's eyes hardened. "That's because you weren't in my chain." Silence fell. The civilian cleared his throat. "Your mission, Project Sable, has been suspended." That landed harder than anything else. Lena's jaw tightened. "On whose authority?" "Joint," the man replied. "Pending damage assessment." Whitaker leaned forward. "You could help yourself here. De-escalate. Acknowledge miscommunication. Allow this to be corrected internally." Lena looked at each of them in turn. Then she said, You left me to die to protect your image. Whitaker's face flushed. That is a gross... And now you're trying to sacrifice a lieutenant to clean it up, she continued. That's not miscommunication. That's moral failure. One of the civilians shifted uncomfortably. Whitaker straightened. Be very careful, Chief Petty Officer. Lena smiled thinly. You should already know. I always am. That evening, Reyes sat alone in off-base temporary housing, staring at the data chip. He hadn't plugged it in yet. Once he did, there would be no deniability, no retreat, just evidence and consequences. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered. Reyes. A pause. Then Lena's voice. They're accelerating, she said. Whitaker's pushing to close this within 48 hours. Reyes exhaled. I figured. There's something you need to know? She continued. The reason I was here. He listened. Project Sable isn't just training, Lena said. It's an integrity audit. Unofficial. We embed operators under nondescript roles and observe how bases handle unexpected pressure, medical, ethical, command decisions. Reyes sat up straighter. You were testing them. Yes, she said. Not with checklists, with reality. And Fort Calder failed, spectacularly. Reyes looked down at the chip. Then why are they still in charge? Because failure doesn't scare institutions, Lena replied. Exposure does. A beat. Daniel, she said. Not Lieutenant, not Sir. If this stays internal, nothing changes. They'll rotate staff, rewrite policy, promote the same people, and if it goes external, then it gets ugly, she said. But honest. Reyes closed his eyes. His father's voice echoed in his head. Rank doesn't make you right. It just gives you room to prove it. I'll submit the evidence, Reyes said. All of it. Oversight. JAG. Inspector General. They'll come for you. I know. Lena's voice softened. You don't owe me this. No, Reyes said. I owe the uniform. The next morning, Fort Calder went on alert. Secure servers were locked, network traffic flagged, command staff summoned to closed-door meetings. Someone had leaked something. By 1100 hours, a black SUV rolled through the gate, Inspector General plates. By noon, Whitaker's office door was sealed. By 1300, everyone knew. The base didn't buzz. It held its breath. Reyes was escorted into a briefing room he'd never seen before. Windowless, soundproof American flag bolted to the wall. Across the table sat a rear admiral, a civilian oversight director, and a JAG colonel. Lieutenant Reyes, the admiral said. You understand the seriousness of what you've submitted? Yes, sir. You understand this may end your career? Reyes met his gaze. Yes, sir. The admiral studied him. Why did you do it? Reyes didn't hesitate. Because we don't get to choose when the oath matters, he said. Only whether we honor it. Silence. Then the admiral nodded once. That night, Lena stood alone on the parade deck, escorted but unrestrained. For the first time since arriving at Fort Calder, she wore her real insignia. Rank restored, trident visible. People watched from a distance. No one spoke. She didn't feel victorious, she felt tired. But also steady. Because tomorrow, consequences would land. And for the first time, they would land on the right people. The morning came without ceremony. No sirens, no announcements, just a different tone in the air, like a storm had passed in the night and left the ground rearranged. At 0700, Fort Calder raised the flag as usual. At 0715, Commander Paul Whitaker was formally relieved of duty. The notice was brief, precise, brutal in its restraint. Loss of confidence in command. In military language, it was a career death certificate. By 0900, 3 senior officers were placed on administrative leave. 2 medical staff were suspended pending disciplinary action. An external review team occupied the operations building, their presence unignorable. Civilian clothes, federal credentials, absolute authority. No one laughed in the medical wing anymore. Denon. Daniel Reyes sat in a plain office with no insignia on the door. He'd been awake all night, waiting. The knock came at 10:20. A captain entered with a folder and a look Reyes couldn't read. At ease, the captain said. This won't take long. Reyes stood anyway. The captain opened the folder. You're cleared of all wrongdoing. Your actions are being cited as exemplary. Reyes blinked. However, the captain continued, your career trajectory will not be typical. Reyes almost smiled. I understand, he said. The captain studied him. Do you? Reyes thought of the chair against the wall, the blood, the waiting. Yes, he said. I do. The captain nodded once. You're being reassigned, not a punishment, not a reward, a place where judgment matters more than politics. He slid the folder across the desk. Reyes read the header, Office of the Inspector General, Field Liaison. He exhaled slowly. Thank you, sir. As the captain turned to leave, he paused. For what it's worth, Lieutenant, the uniform needs people like you. Reyes stood alone for a moment after the door closed. Then he sat down, steady, unbroken. Lena Carter stood at the edge of the flight line as a gray dawn lifted into color. Her injuries were healing, the bruises fading, the pain quieter now, manageable. A black helicopter waited, rotors still. A rear admiral approached her, cap tucked under his arm. Chief Carter, he said, Project Sable is being formally restructured. Your report was influential. Lena nodded. That was the point. He hesitated. You could have let it go, protected yourself. She looked past him, toward the horizon. People always think courage is loud, she said. It's not. It's just choosing not to look away. The admiral studied her, then extended his hand. Thank you, he said. For reminding us what the standards actually are. She shook it once, firm, professional, final. As Lena boarded the helicopter, she glanced back one last time. Fort Calder looked smaller now, not weaker, just exposed. The helicopter lifted, carrying her away from a place that had tried to erase her and failed. She didn't feel anger, she felt closure. Weeks later, Reyes stood in a different building, a different uniform patch on his shoulder. His job now was simple and impossibly hard. Listen when others didn't want to be heard. Late one evening, an envelope appeared on his desk. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, ocean at dusk. A lone figure standing at the water's edge, silhouetted, steady. On the back, handwritten, "You did the right thing." That's enough. Reyes placed it carefully in his drawer. Somewhere out there, Lena Carter was back where she belonged, unseen, uncelebrated, holding the line so others didn't have to bleed alone. Power doesn't fail because of villains. It fails because good people stay silent when silence feels safer. Honor isn't proven in combat alone. It's proven in waiting rooms, in paperwork, in moments where no one is watching and everything is at risk. And sometimes, the bravest thing a soldier can do is refuse to look away from the person left on the floor.